Hello, everybody, and welcome into the emergency podcast. We had to put this together because, as we knew would happen, the Penguins hired a coach right after the Twitter live that you guys did the other night while I was out down and out for the count. But welcome into Two for Talking. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I have comedian Joe Bartnick alongside. You can catch him at Zany's in Nashville tonight if you are there. And then the Pittsburgh Improv on July 10th and the Comedy Studio in Boston on August 23rd. And then Josh Yohe with The Athletic as well. You can catch all his reporting out there in The Athletic. And we've had a lot to write about because all of a sudden the Penguins are very relevant in the national conversation. Gentlemen, and Dan, it's not Mitch Love. That's who we thought. Maybe there was a couple other names that Joe was really getting sold on there because I was able to listen on Tuesday. Joe was all in, and then out of nowhere we have Dan Muse comes in. So what do we know about this guy, Josh, and what have you learned?
I didn't know a whole lot 24 hours ago. I knew who he was. We knew that he was somebody that Kyle spoke with weeks ago, but I don't think anybody had him tabbed as a finalist, quite frankly, myself included. This just goes to show Kyle Dubas was running this. Nobody else was. It was 100% his show. And what do we know about him? We know he's a guy who has had a ton of success coaching young players. If you look at the U.S. developmental program, you look at his work at the USHL and NCAA hockey, he's been successful everywhere he has gone. I've heard nothing but good things about him. This is a human being people like. It's a coach people like. Apparently his work ethic is like John Gruden-esque. He's one of those guys that shows up at 5 a.m. at the facility every day, and he's there till 1 a.m, one of those types. I think he's kind of a hockey dork, for better or worse, something Sidney Crosby will probably like. I think Sid kind of considers himself one of those. But more than anything, what it tells me is this is about the future. This isn't about Sid or Gino or Chris Letang or Eric Carlson. This is about Rucker McGroarty and Billy Koivunen and all of these draft picks that they're going to have in the next couple of years. This is a coach who specializes with 18, 19, 20-year-old players. And it's a different route for the Penguins, no question, Joe.
Yes, it is. Josh, yes, it is. I will be the first. I want to make a public apology to Mr. Dan Muse because on my other podcast, Puck Off, we recorded about 2 hours after I found out. And I was still in the disarray of what? Who? Because I think, as we've talked about since Sully left us, the only thing I didn't want was a guy who's never coached in the NHL and has only done developmental work. And I don't want a guy who's used to talking to kids who are homesick. I want a leader of men. But now here we go with Dan Muse, who's actually from the hometown of one of my good friends, whose sister just called me an hour ago and said, "Oh my God, one of my friend's brothers is your new coach. He's such a great guy from such a great family." I'm like, "Oh God, we better take Puck Off offline." So, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know. Like I said, as long as he can stand up mano a mano, charisma, leader of men against Sully, Tocchet, Carberry, regular season Rod, that's what I'm worried about. And I want him to lead men. I'm not worried about him coaching Letang and Carlson because, quite frankly, I want them gone. I know Sid's a good soldier and he wants what's best. And Gino's here for a retirement tour. We love Gino. So, it is what it is. I'm just a little upset that it seems like Dubas can't wait to throw in the towel on the next 4 years. And, hey, Kyle, we don't have to be terrible. We can be bad, but we don't have to be terrible.
You do get the sense, and listen, it's June 5th. I don't know what the Penguins roster is going to look like come October 7th when the season is scheduled to begin. So I don't want to sit here and say, the Penguins are going to suck next season. But I sure have that sense, like you just kind of get the feeling, and yes, they are rebuilding, but next season really might be a wash. And the new hire from that standpoint makes you feel that way even more strongly, I think, because it's about the future. We all know this. And by the way, I've had people ask me about the new coach, when he's going to speak with the media, when we're going to get to ask this guy some questions. I can tell you right now, it's not going to be until next week, I don't believe. As far as I know, Kyle Dubas and Muse are at the training or the combine, the draft combine in Buffalo. And I'll be up there this weekend myself, in fact. So I don't think he will meet with the media until next week, at which point we can kind of ask him some questions and maybe get a better feel for the situation. But I can tell you this was a curveball. Like, nobody really saw this coming. It's not necessarily a shock when you think of Dubas, and I think the way his mind operates and the kind of guy he would like, it makes some more sense probably. And it's not like he's never been in the NHL. We should, for those who don't know, he's been an assistant under Peter Laviolette the last 2 years in New York. And he was also with Laviolette for 3 years in Nashville as an assistant coach. So regardless of what you might think about Lavi, like he has a guy who's had some success at the NHL level. And those were two fairly successful teams he was on, at least the first year in New York. So he does have some NHL experience, but his bread and butter is certainly coaching at a younger age, which comes with some risk. But you also understand it to some extent when you consider what the Penguins might look like in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Josh, you wrote about it in The Athletic, but the biggest thing is, Billy Koivu and Recker McGroarty, whoever, the two guys we get, at the end of this month, that's the future. And it scares me a little bit to think, crap, like we're really going away on Sid's career on a down note.
Well, it scares me on two respects. It scares me on the respect of that, Mike Johnston and Dave Haxtell were good at working with young guys.
Yeah.
And they couldn't win a poker game in the NHL. So, and then the other thing is, I know there's a million new Penguin fans and the Sid Gino generation, and, it's about bringing families. Look how many fans they've won over, and it's like a hockey town now. It'll never be the Steelers, but it's definitely a hockey town now. Yeah, they're a hockey town, but no one wants to go 10-64. Then you're going to see Pirate at 10. There has to be a level of winning. I don't mean they have to even be in the playoff picture, but they can't be Pirates awful.
No.
Yeah, the tanking for Gavin McKenna, as much as I want that to happen, that gets pretty rough. Everybody forgets even Sid's rookie year. Everybody thinks, it all started off great, but towards the end of Sid's rookie year, I can assure you, as an usher, there were plenty of empty seats and people filling in the lower levels from the F and E balcony.
Well, that's something you worry about too. It is a great hockey town, but Pittsburgh is still a city that is far more likely to support winners than it is losers. And they have gone 3 years in a row without making the playoffs. And sometimes I do think when I hear Kyle, I get a little confused, because on one level he will talk about having this great urgency to get back as soon as possible to winning, but at the same time he also preaches patience, and that's a tough thing to swallow, I think, for the fan base. You need one or the other, and sometimes I don't think you need to take 5 years to build a hockey team when you've got some of the resources they already have and all the money they have to spend. Sometimes I think, come on, let's start. Let's go. What are we waiting around for, right? So I do sense some apathy from the fans at this point. This can't go on for much longer. They're going to have to turn aggressive at some point.
Well, that's the problem, Josh, and that's why I've always been scared of Dubas. Like this grand plan. Well, let's face it, his grand plan didn't work in Toronto, and he had much better younger players in their prime. I like McGroarty and I like Koivunen. That's not Marner and Matthews and in Prince Willie. So he has to step it up. And I don't like this 5-year plan, and I don't like tearing it all down. And in my opinion, which goes against some people's opinions, is and I think Corey, I won't put words in his mouth, but to me, we were adequate goaltending away from at least playing meaningful games the last week of the season, and so tearing everything down. Detroit, Chicago, they still haven't come back, so I don't think we should do that.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%, Joe. Like, that scares the crap out of me. Like, I don't want to go there. That gets you in a purgatory that you don't get out of, and but then again, I mean, this guy could kind of be the guy that builds it towards, Sid, I think, will be happy with him. That made me feel good. And Sid just wants to win. So hopefully those things combine together with, pushing out an Eric Carlson and a Letang, and there, boom, there you go.
Yeah. Well, yes, Kyle has his work cut out for him this summer to try to remake this team, and remaking this team in part involves getting rid of the 7 or 8 horrible contracts they have right now, whatever the number is. It's a really big number, and that still is perhaps their biggest problem. Maybe Dan Muse is really good. Like, we don't know. I never like to take one side or the other when a coach is hired, because especially when it's kind of an unknown, you just don't know. And as much as I respect Mike Sullivan and think he's a great, great coach, did the Penguins have did they look like a well-coached hockey team the last couple of years? Like, no, they didn't. Now, was that on the coaching staff? Was that on the roster construction? I tend to blame it more on the roster construction, but clearly there was something wrong with the staff the last couple of years too. The message wasn't getting through. Maybe a new voice is a good thing. I don't know. I think we all have Mike Johnston syndrome a little bit. We remember how that went, and that scares everybody, and understandably so. The Penguins, though, it's just kind of a mystery to me in terms of how he's going to work out, in terms of how the roster is constructed, how aggressive Dubas gets this summer. Like, nobody knows any of these answers. But what we do know is they've missed the playoffs now 3 years in a row, and that's obviously an issue.
Right, and let me speak for my section of the fan base, if I may, that how close that we are now. Are we close to winning a Stanley Cup? Absolutely not. You watched the game last night. We're not. We're like an AHL team, even with Gino compared to those guys. But to me, making the playoffs and winning around, just being in the dance is all I want. Now, maybe because I've watched 5 Stanley Cups, I've gone to 4 parades. Maybe my cup is kind of full, but I don't want to just suck to then, because one day we're going to have Mount Olympus and we're going to win the cup. I'd rather just lose in the first round for the next 10 years, but at least I have playoff hockey.
And philosophically, Joe, I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. Kyle Dubas doesn't agree with you. He has flat out told me, I don't want to just be a wild card team and lose in the first round. I want to build something special. And that's great. Like, in theory, it's great, but it's really hard to pull off too.
Yeah, and Kyle, you were a while. Your whole stint as a general manager, that's your highest point has been losing in the first round.
Yeah, that's how much. I really guess it really comes down to how much of that is Toronto versus Dubas. Toronto just has that problem. So, like, we can't deny that. But he didn't build a winner. That's for sure.
Well, I think the last season he was in Toronto, I think he did a good job, and they just choked. Before that, I don't think he had a playoff caliber team. I think he did the soft, little, small skilled, but he finally learned his lesson. That's my biggest gripe against Dubas. I know Josh says, he wants to rough it up, but he doesn't draft or he doesn't trade for that sort of thing.
And now, looking at the new head coach, if you're Dan Muse, this is a really difficult job this season, because you've got a general manager who's trying to build something for the future. You got a couple of good young players, but I will remind people, I like Koivunen and I like Rucker. Every team has a Koivunen and a Rucker in their system. Like, they're good-looking young players. But like Joe said, this isn't Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. It's not. So you know that going in. So you don't have that much to work with, even though you were brought in to coach these young guys, a lot of whom probably won't be ready for this season, the Harrison Brunuks of the world. You got Sidney Crosby, who wants to win right now. You've got Evgeny Malkin and Eric Carlson and Chris Letang, who are all past their primes and who are all notoriously very difficult to coach. Like, if they've been difficult to coach their whole lives, you think at age 38 or whatever, they're going to be easy to coach now for a guy who's never been an NHL coach? No. So I'm curious to get to know this guy and to learn about this guy just from a psychological standpoint, just from the standpoint of communication. How does he deal with these people? when Gino doesn't back check on the third home game of the year and they give up a goal? Is he going to bench him? Something Sully would never do. Is he going to get in Erik Karlsson's face when he makes his 20th mistake of a game? There's no easy answer for that. I don't know anything about this guy or his personality. He better have some thick skin, though, because I'm telling you, this is not an easy job he's walking into.
My biggest hope is that he doesn't have that problem because somehow Karlsson and Letang are gone. See, I think Gino's Gino, but Gino's I know I'm a Gino guy. He's on Mount Rushmore. He's going to make up whatever the mistake.
That's right.
Letang and Karlsson were the biggest problem last, even more than Jari, really.
I agree. No, I totally agree with you, Joe. And Gino, it probably is his last season. So it's a 1-year thing, even if he is a problem in some way. Well, Tang still has 3 freaking years left on his contract. Karlsson still has 2. And you said it. Anybody who watched the Penguins last season, I long ago lost track of how many goals against those 2 were responsible for. And they play on different pairings, obviously, both being right-handed. One of those 2 guys is on the ice 80% of the time. And they were both an absolute disaster last season. So I wrote it a month ago that the very first thing Kyle Dubas should try to do this offseason is try to trade Erik Karlsson. And I still maintain that. It's not a personal thing against Erik. I understand he's a Hall of Famer. He is precisely what the Penguins don't need. And that blue line is such of a disaster right now. I don't give a shit who your coach is. If you don't fix the blue line, it doesn't matter.
And Josh, the funny thing is, I think Letang is actually worse. Because I think at least Karlsson has some upside.
Yeah, he still gets forwards the puck and still does his thing offensively. That's true. I mean, he still, in terms of generating 5-on-5 offense, is a real presence. He is, and Letang really isn't as much anymore, as we know. But I also think Letang, I don't know that there's a team in the league that wants him or that would trade for him, especially with his health. Karlsson, if he eats some money, I think you probably could deal him. So that's something you need to consider in all of it.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, the super genius, our buddy Mark Madden, made an incredibly astute point, as he usually does. We're saying that maybe Mr. Muse's problem is going to be dealing with Gino or Letang or Karlsson. His biggest problem is going to be telling Achari that, hey, you're the 18th best forward in this organization.
Yeah.
That's dealing with those veterans is probably going to be harder because at least he can play Gino.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, Nola Chari and Kevin Hayes, those are the 2 guys that come to mind. Like, these are guys making pretty healthy money who are not going to help you win under any circumstances, and you know that. And there are 2 other guys. Can Dubas really do anything to get rid of those guys? Probably not. They're both entering the last years of their contract. And that's why a lot of people, by the way, have asked me, like, Josh, if you think Kyle's going to get aggressive in the free agency market in 26, why doesn't he just do it now? And the answer is because you get Nola Chari off the books after this season. You get Kevin Hayes off the books after this season. You get Malkin off the books after this season. They have so much more money to play with next summer, and they get so much dead weight off of the roster following this season. I think that's part of why Dubas is kind of being patient. And, hey, some of that's on him. Those are 2 guys he brought in here. Ryan Graves is a guy he brought in here. Tristan Jarry is a guy he gave a 5-year contract. So people like to blame Ron Hextall for everything, but certainly, there's some blood on Kyle's hands here as well.
Absolutely.
And he'll, to his credit, he admits it. I mean, it's a very simple thing where Kyle got here. I think he wanted to rebuild the second he got here 2 years ago. And I think he felt pressured by Sid and Mike Sullivan. Hey, let's win now. We can still win. Let's make some good moves. Hextall was an idiot. Like, you're smart. Get us some good players. We'll win. And he said, all right, fine. And he made mistakes. We could write a mini series on what happened on July 1st, 2023, and the mistakes that were made that day. They set the Penguins back maybe years. And Dubas knows it now, and to his credit, the mindset is different. But you're right. The new coach, he's still going to have to sit there and look Sidney Crosby in the eye, and Sid's going to want to win this season. I promise you, Sid's not down with some rebuild. Sid doesn't want to finish 26th in the league this year just because they might get a really high draft pick. That's not what he's all about. He's wired to win and nothing else, and that's what he's going to push for. So it's just a really interesting psychological dynamic here when you look at it that way.
Of all the mistakes, and I was shocked and happy with the Carlson trade, and I'm still for it. But I'll tell you, I said at the time when everyone's like they're getting out the garbage, I said at the time, it's duly noted many places, I said Kulikov is not that bad. Like, we could have used him. He didn't play great as a Penguin, but you now look at him, playing big time minutes on the Stanley Cup finalists, and he won a cup last year with that team. They kept him, from last year, so he would look pretty good right now as a Penguin. But I don't blame Dubas for that. I honestly think that the narrative that, well, what are you going to do? You might as well just sign Jari was a bad one. I know now we're like hindsight's 2020, but it was just like, well, if you look at goaltending in the league now, unless you're Bobrovsky, everything's a coin flip.
That's right. No, of course it is.
Even Vasilevsky,
Yeah.
It's just like, of all people, I would have never expected him.
The difference between like the number one goalie in the league and the 30th goalie in the league, like, it gets closer every year. It really does. And it's the most important position in sports. It really is, but it's the most fickle right now in the NHL. This is not the old days where if you had Waugh or Brodeur or Hasek or whatever, you were good to go. Those guys don't really exist quite as much, I don't think. And the game has just changed in that regard. So, yeah, giving Jari a 5-year contract was a disaster. I don't think anybody in the Penguins organization wanted to do that. In fact, I know they didn't, but it happened. I don't know where they go from here. I don't think Miroshov is ready this season. I think he probably needs one more year. I think the odds are Tristan Jarry is the starting goaltender on opening night. As crazy as it sounds, who else is it going to be? It's not like Alex Nedeljkovic is any better.
No, he's absolutely not. And programming note for those, because we did an emergency pod because of Corey, and God bless, his son is doing a lot better, was down at the hospital with his son. We did an emergency podcast on Twitter, which a lot of people joined in and we loved. But you can hear my Casey DeSmith rants for all of you who were waiting for it after that debacle.
It was rare form. Joe was in very rare form.
It's all captured. So subscribe, Apple, Spotify, wherever finer podcasts are sold. For those who only watch on YouTube, I was an epic. My epic Casey DeSmith rant is on there. So.
And if anyone goes to a Wheeling Nailers game, there is a Casey DeSmith nameplate that you can buy for Joe and send it to him.
Yeah. I have a question.
I don't think.
Corey, I'm sorry. I know. Before you move along, is there any? I guess I didn't see any press conferences. I've been traveling. I don't know if Dubas had a press conference. Is there any? Is he going to hire an old school veteran presence? I mean, I guess not Lavalette, but somebody to stand next to him on the bench.
I have to think so. I haven't heard any names specifically just yet. I'm sure in the next few days we will. I'm curious to see if Dan Muse is given full power to hire who he wants as an assistant, or if Kyle has some heavy say in that. Usually the head coach gets to kind of pick who he wants to be surrounded with, but I have to think that would be smart to have some guidance, somebody who's been around the block. I don't know who it would be, but I would strongly recommend that. I think that's in everybody's best interest, especially when you consider how many veterans are still on this team. To have somebody, not that they don't respect this guy, but to bring in somebody maybe who's been behind the NHL bench before, I think is a very, very good idea, Joe.
That, and also as well, for what I've been saying for the last 6 weeks, just someone that can turn and look Sullivan and talk it, and regular season Rod and Carberry in the eye and be like, yeah, you're not going to treat us like, like the JV team over here.
No.
And even with referees.
No, you're right. And that goes a long way. And for all the Penguins issues the last few years, Sullivan had a respect about him in that way that not many did. He had a command about him. And this is a guy that nobody's really heard of before, quite honestly. Doesn't mean he's not, like I said, it doesn't mean he's not good. He might be great. We don't know. But when you are kind of a no-name type, a younger guy, There are going to be credibility issues, I guess, even though it's not his fault. You're going to have to deal with that. I would think an older coaching staff, at least somebody on that staff that's a veteran, makes a lot of sense.
Like I said, at the first, easy for me to say. It took me 6 weeks and Josh prepping me like I'm going to court on the Twitter podcast to, okay, I can live with Mitch Love. I can live with DJ Smith.
We're back
to wake up to Mr. Muse. Like I said, I apologize,
back to square
Mr.
one.
Muse.
I know.
I didn't get enough sleep. I had a few too many cocktails. I woke up like, what?
I'm afraid to find out what Joe said about this guy, Corey.
No, it was fine.
I didn't. I haven't had a chance to go listen to Puck Off yet, but I'm curious myself. And the one thing, the saving grace, I thought was, in our text thread, Joe, when you said he's from Burr's hometown, I was like, well, maybe there's some kind of connection where he will, just like if he has Burr's temperament of the early 2000s. Where he's like, what are you doing? Like it just flipping out on people.
He will be serving the bench minor if he has Burr's temperament.
Yeah.
Listen, he's from Burr's hometown, and I can confirm that Artie loves him because Artie's kid played for him at Yale, by the way.
Oh.
I touched base with Artie yesterday. Artie said, great guy, great coach. Everyone's going to love him. So if he's okay with Artie, I think we have to give him a chance.
Oh, my God. Yeah, he's okay with the Burr family and Artie. Hey, well, what? Can we have do they ever have like assistants to the GM or special, whatever Artie's title? Did they ever stand behind the bench? He can definitely look Tocchet and Sully in the eye.
That's true. I bet Tocchet, like him and Tocchet would just start laughing if they tried to glare at each other. That's not. Yeah, we should have Artie on the bench. Why the hell not? Nobody's messing with Artie.
Talking about somebody that would command respect of the players. Like there's not a player that wouldn't hear his voice, screaming at them to do something and be like, all right, fine, that's fine. I'll do it. Like might even scare Letang straight. I would just give anything to, see Bill Burr type just flipping out on Letang for not playing defense. Dude, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to be back by the net. Like, what are you doing?
He's been hearing it for 38 years. I think that ship has sailed. But.
Yeah. It's speaking of before we move on to the Stanley Cups, and I hope Chris never hears this. But my son was going through his procedure, and he's getting like the goofy medicine, and then they're gonna put him in anesthesia, and they're like telling him like, oh, you're gonna pretend you're going to a spaceship. Is there any Penguins player you'd take with him? And like Sid's his favorite. Mario's actually his favorite. And he goes, Chris Letang. And out loud, I just said, I wish he would take Letang on a spaceship. Big reaction in the room from all the Pens fans. So, of course, we're going through a serious thing, and my wife just looks at me like, really? Like you're making jokes now? But that's how some of us deal with serious situations.
That's right.
Gotta lighten the mood.
It's really serious insurance. That's
exactly.
Serious.
If
there's only one man to go to for your insurance needs,
Bill Neofus. And by the way, I'm curious, as you should ask Bill for next week about this whole new distracted driving law in Pennsylvania, which, by the way, my mother called me while I was driving today to remind me. She said, it's distracted driving, or like there's distracted driving laws going in effect today. I said, you called me to tell me this. Well, you knew I was driving. But anyways, Mr. Bill Neofus, he might have something to say about that. But does he have any little tidbits for us, Josh?
I'll have to ask him about that. I did have lunch with Bill the other day. I'm not so sure that he's going to want to represent the new quarterback in town. Some people are pro Rodgers, some people are anti Rodgers. I'm not sure Bill's a huge fan of his, although I'm sure he could be talked into representing him because when it comes to insurance in Pittsburgh, he is king. And I have no doubt Aaron Rodgers only wants to be with the best. Simple reminder, our great sponsor, Bill Neofus, the Neofus Insurance Group, they've been in Pittsburgh since 1960, the year Mavs beat the Yankees. They're the best of the best. It's 412-364-3388. It's Neofus, Neofes insurance.com. As we say every week on this show, or twice a week this week, as it were, whatever your insurance needs are, you name it, rental, car insurance, you name it, go right down the list. Bill and his great people will take care of you. So give Bill a call. I'm going to give you the number one more time, 412-364-3388. 3388. There it is. I got it right.
Thank you, Bill. And if you want to talk insurance and your hatred of the Capitals, Alexander Ovechkin, the many other things, Flyers, just go to Bill's office. It's a great way to spend your day. So we'll talk a little bit about game one, since it did happen last night, and then a little bit about Rodgers here. I mean, this is, just so everybody knows, a little bit of an abridged podcast. Joe's got his show and everybody's busy, but game one last night lived up to the hype. Couldn't have been better. This is how I felt. Leon scores right away. I'm like, of course, the Oilers are going to win this. And then the Panthers come back and storm back. And I'm like, I knew it. Damn it. The Panthers are going to win this. And then ultimately the Oilers do come back and win it in overtime. And you knew as soon as that puck flipped over the glass, it was going to be some combination of McDavid and Draisaitl that ended it. Didn't you, Joe?
I did. That's all they were going to call it, a puck over the glass or blood on the ice. At least it only went to single overtime. I always think when you lose in double or longer overtime, it's like winning 2 games or losing 2 games. And the worst thing that would have happened is if they would have held them out in the first and then came back from the second intermission and lose 10 seconds in on the power play. So at least it ended easily for Florida. I said on puck off, we will know, because I picked Florida and I stuck with it on puck off. I'm like, I feel crazy because it's funny. All 3 of us on puck off picked Florida, except our producers are a legitimate Oiler fans with the Oilers. Yeah. But I said, we will know in 10 minutes if Florida is bullying Edmonton, or does Edmonton look like, if Edmonton looks like the JV, like Carolina did and kind of like Toronto did at times, then we're going to know. But what happened was Edmonton didn't. Even though they scored the first goal, Kane was throwing hits. Casper was throwing. They just did not back down physically from Florida. And I said, if that happens, I think Edmonton's going to win the series, because then Jesus and Leon will just take over.
I thought it was a really entertaining game. Although I will say, maybe I'm in the minority. I actually thought the overtime was terrible. There was a whistle every 10 seconds. It was actually not great hockey in overtime. They both played so safe. But the first 3 periods, regulation, was sensational hockey. I thought Florida was the better team for most of the first 3 periods. But I saw something that would concern me if I were a Panthers fan. And I know you guys saw it too in the 3rd period and in overtime. I just thought Edmonton's speed started to overwhelm Florida, and I thought it started to wear them down. And I thought they looked really tired most of overtime. That's not a good sign for Florida. That Edmonton team, boy, chasing them around can really wear you out. I thought it's what we saw. Usually it's Florida that wears people down because they're so physical. They just beat you up, and by the end of games, they're the much stronger team. So if you're the Oilers, you got to be pretty encouraged. You were the better team probably most of the night. Your speed clearly gave them problems. I actually thought Florida did a really good job on McDavid most of the night. He didn't dominate the game by any stretch. So maybe that's a good sign for them moving forward, but maybe it's a bad sign. You kind of kept them in check and you still lost. I will say this, Florida better win tomorrow night in game 2. I don't think you're going to beat Edmonton 4 out of 5. I know it's Florida and they're capable of anything, but you better not fall far behind them too far. I think Edmonton is a good front-running team. I think the longer the series goes, if you go to a game 6 or a game 7 situation, I favor Florida because I think they're the mentally tougher team. But if Edmonton's just going to skate you into the ground again in game 2, boy, I think they're in trouble.
Well, I agree with that, but I think if there's any team that losing game 1 in the series, it doesn't affect, I think it's the Florida Panthers. I did think, let me check. I think Arvidsson's goal was huge. He's been quiet. He was a healthy scratch at the beginning. He came in from the Kings and he scored that big goal. I also thought Tkachuk was very quiet last night, almost like he was nursing an injury. He was almost silent compared to Bennett, and Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe his 2 line mates were everywhere last night. Kane played a huge. Kane was so physical. Kasperi Kapanen was so physical. Yeah. I'll tell you what, Skinner made some incredible saves, but the announcers, I don't know. I don't know why, but they seem to not want to give Bobrovsky. I thought Bobrovsky played a great game, and every time he made a huge save, they're like, "Oh, the puck, it hit the pipe," or it's like, "What? He made the save."
Well, Joe, you mentioned how about the way Kasperi Kapanen has played? I mean, he's always had the physical ability. He's a great skater. He's got a good pair of hands. He almost won it in overtime. I thought he had the game won, which would have been a sensational goal. But that's if you're Edmonton, obviously you have star power that nobody else has. It's the depth guys that we never really think are good enough. But if guys like Kapanen are going to play at that level, that makes them a different kind of team. I don't know if he's finally putting all the tools together after being in the league for 8 or 9 or 10 years, whatever it's been for Kapanen now. He's always been kind of a maddening player who drives coaches nuts. I assure you, he was not Sully's favorite player to deal with. But he's made a real impact. I noticed, especially in the third period and overtime, I noticed him every time he was on the ice. He looked dangerous.
Yeah, he's on the second line with Leon too. So he's playing big time minutes. His physical game has been impressive. He's going to net. It's almost like he knows this is his last chance saloon.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be
that move to spring himself on a breakaway.
Oh.
That was, I don't want to say it was Mario-esque, but it was not Kasperi Kapanen-esque. That's for sure.
No, but he's always he'll do things like that. He's always had that ability. Then the next game he would be terrible. That's kind of who he's always been. But he's been consistently good in the postseason for the Oilers, and they're just tough to beat in that building. I know Florida's a great road team, but Edmonton, when they start buzzing in that building, I mean they really thrive playing in front of the home crowd. I don't know what it is. It's not the great ice because that place doesn't have great ice like the old Oilers building did. But they are just a dangerous team in that building. And even if they go up 2-0, I'm not going to count out Florida. We saw them do it against Toronto. We know how great they are. But I just feel like, with all due respect to the Maple Leafs, the Oilers are a better team than they are. And you better not fall too far behind them because you can just feel the confidence the Oilers have right now. I don't know when it happened, if it was coming back against the Kings or what point this postseason, but their body language just suggests that they know they're going to win when they show up. They haven't had that before. They just look like a team on a mission right now.
I feel like it changed that game 4 against the Kings.
Maybe.
Tying it late, it felt like, okay, this is a different team. It's really hard for me to see McDavid not winning this cup, like doing everything in his power. But that being said, I heard you guys said it on Tuesday, he has to do it. He has to pull this off. Like until he does, he isn't in that category.
I mean, he did go 0-0 in game 6 and game 7. It can't be forgotten. So we shall see. I mean, this a lot on the line in game 2.
It's a huge game because if the Panthers win, I mean, it's they did the job. They accomplished their mission.
That's right. No, if the Panthers win, it's mission accomplished. They get a couple of days off to rest. They got home ice advantage the rest of the way. And I know it sounds funny to say. Obviously, they're down 1-0, so they'd rather the series go a little longer. But I think the longer the series goes, that's just a comfort thing for Florida. They've been there a million times. Edmonton has never been able to seal the deal against a team like them. So
I will say this, Josh, though. I know it's not 1980. It's not even 2010. You can't give up a 2-goal lead on the road.
You're right.
You want that one.
Especially
you want that
one. When I think I saw the stat last night, that was the first time under Maurice that they've ever lost a playoff game when they had a lead after the second period.
Yes.
They are a great defensive team with a Hall of Fame goalie. You don't expect them to ever. When it was 3-1, I think we all thought, Florida's winning game 1. But to Edmonton's credit, they have a firepower that nobody else in hockey has right now. No lead is safe against that team. So I give them credit for the guts they showed to come back and win. It's far too early to say this, but I just feel like whoever wins game 2 probably wins the series. Statistically speaking, I bet I'm right on that.
Yes.
It's a fascinating matchup, and we thought it'd be great hockey, and it was. I really enjoyed that game last night.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
My fear for Florida, I've been saying it all playoffs, is that third time through to a cup is when it starts to catch up to you real quick. Like I remember in 2010, Sid, running Jason Spezza ragged, and beating the Senators very convincingly, and it was like, here we go, we're going again. The Pens, dominated the Flyers. Jake Gensel scores like 9 goals in Game 6 in Philly, and we're like, oh yeah, we're going 3 in a row, and then just at some point you lose that energy, and so it's like, is Edmonton that fast, or is Florida losing the energy? I don't know. It's gonna be fascinating to see. And I don't know. I really wish I could say I had an educated guess, but it really tomorrow night is gonna be must see TV.
You always do wait for the wheels to come off for a team in that situation. You're always kind of waiting. Tampa, they showed a lot of guts until the end against Colorado, but finally that third trip there was just too much. We'll see. I've told this story before, I think, on this podcast, but Penguins made it in 08 and won it in 09. And like you said, they lost to Montreal in the second round in 2010. And they had a real easy-looking road the rest of the way. They would have had the Flyers in the next round who weren't that good. And then a very young Blackhawks team who hadn't won anything yet. And I said to Sid that a couple years later, I said, oh, man, you guys really screwed that up. You had a nice little path to winning another one. He goes, nah. I said, what do you mean? He said, we were exhausted. We were done. It's because we don't play. We don't know what it's like. But I think hockey teams in that spot, they know when they hit that wall. They know what it feels like. Maybe Florida has, maybe they haven't. I don't know. I'll tell you who hasn't, though, Joe, is Sam Bennett, who I actually thought was the best player on the ice. Not even the goals. Like the way he was just like skating around people like it was nothing. Like, Jesus, how much money is this guy making himself this postseason?
I know. And I was shocked. I was pleasantly surprised that they didn't waive the goal, because I thought oh, that's such a just a little bump. Like, come on.
I know. Well, nobody knows what goaltender interference is anyway. But Sam Bennett, you're right. Tkachuk, there's no way Tkachuk's 100%. He is not himself. That is very clear. But Sam Bennett, my God. And for those who don't know, he is an unrestricted free agent this summer. I'm sure they'll do everything in their power to bring him back. But boy, will there be teams waiting to sign that guy if he's available July 1st.
Oh, Toronto thinks they have him.
Yeah. Toronto thinks they have everybody.
Right.
I'll tell you one person that the Maple Leafs don't have is Aaron Rodgers. He is now and here's how I found the news. It's the great Seth Rohrbaugh, your colleague, who's your former colleague, who's at the Trib. Tweeted and said, "Hey Pirates," tagged the Pirates, said, "Hey Pirates, now would be a great time for a news dump." And I knew in my head, I was like, "Yep, Aaron Rodgers, I bet signed," and scrolled the feed a little bit.
You know what? I bet Nighting auctioned off the Clemente and the Stargell statues today, probably. Probably on eBay.
You can probably find them where the bricks were sitting in the
demolished. I'm torn. I'm 50-50 on Aaron Rodgers, because I feel like the Steelers are close, relatively speaking. I don't think they're like close to being the Chiefs or anything like that, but I think they're close to being a team that can win a playoff game, not do what they've done the last couple times in the playoffs. Especially like DK Metcalf, I think changes things. Like when that happened, I was like, oh, okay, that's like a legit wide receiver. This isn't George Pickens, babysitting hour. But Aaron Rodgers, what does he have left? He was actually pretty good the second half of last year. The Jets sucked, but his numbers, if you look at what he did, and so maybe by then he was fully recovered. I don't know. I wanted to see what Mason would do in a full year, but what was that?
I think that's what the Steelers are banking on. He was in the second half, statistically, he was very good last year. And he still finished with 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Pretty good. Not what he was, obviously. Kind of like Ben in the end. A lot of people were complaining about Ben his last couple of years. Oh, he's washed up. You look at his numbers, like he's still pretty good.
Yeah.
It's still better than, Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph, right? And that's, Joe, I don't know how you feel about this, but I ultimately think with all the quarterbacks that were out there, like Rodgers is the best they were going to do. I think for just this coming season, he probably gives them the highest ceiling. I understand he can be a pain in the ass, but again, if he's a pain in the ass, it's for 1 year probably. Like this isn't some long-term thing. The Steelers are going to be on national TV every week. They're going to be talked about on ESPN for 20 hours every week. They're going to be the center of attention. If you like that kind of a thing, it's a great day. I still think he elevates their ceiling in the short term, though.
I am a Steeler fan. I've been a Steeler fan since the mid '70s. I'm a Steeler fan, but I don't even know. But like, I just want entertainment, and I'm sick of hey, it's 2nd and 9, we're gonna run. Hey, it's 3rd and 8, we're gonna throw it 3 yards. Aaron Rodgers come in here and throw the ball around and put some excitement in this franchise. Could it be a disaster? Yes. They're not going to win the Super Bowl anyway. So I'd rather have a guy come in here and throw the ball around the yard. Hey, and not like, hey, let's bring in 4 tight ends. He's going to demand some wide receivers. People are like, he's going to bring in his own offense. Thank God someone's going to. We don't even have an offense. We have boredom when we're going to have offense. So this is going to be fantastic. I've met him a couple of times. Yeah, wherever you see on the internet, he's personally a good guy. Everyone's a little crazy. He's personally a good guy. I think he's going to be good. I wasn't against Rudolph just being the quarterback. He saved Christmas 1 year,
Right.
But let's have a little excitement.
That's right. And, Mason is a great backup to have around now. If things don't go well, whatever, he's okay. We know he can play a little bit. And I promise we will have our pal Mark Cabali on at some point before training camp to talk about this. He's been telling me for months this was going to happen. It's basically a handshake deal, and it finally did. I'll be curious to hear his opinion on this. And I know one thing Mark has talked about is that he has heard that Rodgers kind of wants the power to call his own plays and just run the offense as he sees fit, to which I say, great. Well, why not? Seriously. What has the Steelers coaching staff done in recent years that would make you think that they are really, at the top of the field in terms of calling plays or designing an offense? I love when the Hall of Fame quarterback is in charge. We saw it with Ben. The Steelers offense was always at its best when Ben said, all right, I'm just going to go no huddle. This it's fine. I got it. Guys like that, they know what to do. My only question with the Steelers and the way they've run things in the last few months, I know George Pickens is a pain in the ass. I know he was an insufferable child. I get it. But if you knew there was a good chance Rodgers was going to sign, like, wouldn't you keep him around for one more year with Metcalf and just give Rodgers as many weapons as possible? That's the only thing that doesn't completely make sense to me, unless Rodgers maybe said to them, I don't want to deal with that asshole. Just get rid of him, which I guess is conceivable. But if I'm looking at it as an outsider, I'd be like, boy, the Steelers would look a lot more dangerous to me with George Pickens, even if he is a psychopath.
I thought that's why they got rid of him, because I thought maybe they knew that, hey, Rudolph can't handle both diva receivers, even though Metcalf isn't a complete diva. Just they both demand the ball, and we're not going to throw the ball 50 times.
Maybe that's all it is. I don't know. I'm intrigued by what's going on. Guys, can you imagine? They just announced the first day of training camp. I think it's July 24th, something like that. Can you imagine the circus it's going to be when Aaron freaking Rodgers shows up in Latrobe, Pennsylvania? Good Lord. I can't even imagine. What do you think the top story on the nightly news is going to be that night?
Oh my God. It's to a degree, it's going to be insufferable. But like you said, Joe, people have their opinions of him. It's like, I actually tweeted it a while ago. I said, I have 2 takes prepared. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign with us, my take is going to be good. I don't want a quarterback that is such a piece of garbage his own family won't talk to him. But if he signs with us, I want a quarterback that's so good at football his family won't talk to him. And that's what I think we have. He's that good at football that, like, they can't even talk to him. They're like, you're not welcome at Thanksgiving dinner. We don't want to hear how great you are, Aaron.
But like I said, my point before, it's an entertainment business. It's like, I want the Steelers to win, but I'd rather they be entertaining and go 7-9 than be what they are now and go 10-7 and lose in the first round of the playoffs. Like, let's see the full circus.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. Listen, my lady friend Jamie always says, God, I can't stand him. And then 2 seconds later, she says, God, I hope they sign him, though. I can't wait to watch this year. I'm like, I know. It's going to be entertaining. I can't wait. That's what it's going to be.
Cabali's job just got a whole lot easier this year. The articles write themselves. I'm sure there's not a Steelers beat writer aside from probably Jerry Dulac. I know he's not a very big fan of Aaron Rodgers, so that'll be interesting.
Do you think Cabali's going to go on the Pat McAfee show with Rodgers?
I would love to see it.
Just go on. I'm waiting to see it.
Here's a Michigan-Ohio State angle to this. Roman Wilson, I think, is going to surprise people. And I say surprise. He shouldn't surprise people. He's a good player. He would have done well last year if not for being injured. But everybody's kind of forgot that we have him. He's really good. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they'll add somebody. I see comment from Armand, like Alan Lazard might come because he's Aaron Rodgers' buddy. But here, as a Michigan fan, I'm saying this. Look, I have this on my desk. So I'm telling you as a Michigan fan, Will Howard, if he were able to dissect plays pre-snap, he could be a Pro Bowl quarterback. His problem is his quarterback rating is horrific when he can't read the defense ahead of time. But when he knows where he's going with the ball, his quarterback rating is best in college football. Maybe he learned something from Aaron Rodgers.
Do you think Aaron will pull the young man aside and say, let me mentor you? Because he doesn't have that reputation.
Will. But I really, if I'm Will Howard, you have to go into it thinking he's not going to do that to me, but I'm going to learn this guy's mindset and figure it out.
We better not see Will Howard.
Oh, God.
We better not see after Labor Day. After he better start the third exhibition game, and then he better be on the inactive list.
Yeah, people, I assure you, if Tom Brady in his rookie year played, he would not have been that good. Give it a minute. People are getting a little crazy on the Will Howard talk.
I hope he never plays for the Steelers.
And Mason Rudolph, by the way, good for him. He can carve out himself a nice, steady career here. Make the back money.
Pick up the paycheck. I got to run. I love all the fans. You're getting 3 this week. 3-2 for talkings this week.
Right. Yeah, Joe, enjoy Nashville, by God. I wish I were there to see you perform in Nashville. What a treat that must be.
It's going to be fun. Thank you, fans. You guys are the best. Thanks, Corey. We're praying for your son some more. Absolutely. And let's go, Pens. Dan Muse. Jesus.
Yeah, Dan Muse. Can Dan be our Muse? Let's see. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. See ya.